Hi guys, welcome to the Dad Bub Show. I'm one of your hosts, Ken Blowfield, and Brendo and I, we interview dads all over the world to find out their secrets on balancing how to be a high-performing dad and a high performer in life too. So without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dad Bub podcast. We have here a good friend of mine and a good collaboration of Brendo and Jimmy. They've known each other in the industry for a long time, but of course never actually spoke. So bringing these two powerhouses together is going to be an absolute rockin' show. So we've got Jimmy here. Jimmy Halley is the owner of Gym Boss Marketing Co. It's an ad agency as well as a call center service for gym owners. It's absolutely a bomb. He also owns the Gym Boss podcast, helping gyms all around Australia and the world to grow and scale using the right types of lead generation, the right types of business systems, and how to actually grow their business. So they're not just working in their business, they're able to work on their business and have obviously time for themselves, which makes it so perfect with what we're going to be speaking about today. Because Jimmy is also a dad of two kids. He's got Jack, who's his boy, and a 4-year-old daughter, which is Sailor. And, you know, he's been doing and balancing this act for almost as long as I've known Jimmy for now. So Jimmy's been balancing this dichotomy of how to be a successful entrepreneur, how to provide for his family, how to create an amazing business that supports all the businesses around Australia and the world in the gym space, whilst also being a fantastic and amazing dad, and of course, an amazing wife to Katie as well. Jimmy, welcome to the show, my man. How are you?
Mate, what an intro. Can I just get you to walk around with me and just introduce me at public places? Like, that'd be amazing.
If Ken had a superpower, it would be those intros, because every single time it just blows me away and I'm like, oh, he's the man. You roll with it, bro. Roll with it.
I saw this picture. This is me, right? Totally in a nutshell. If you go on my Facebook page, you'll see this photo that I posted a while back. It's about like LinkedIn versus real life, or like resumes versus real life. And it's like a picture of Darth Vader. And one's like... assistant to the Sith Lord, and then the LinkedIn version's like CEO of the Death Star, CEO of this, the Clone War Army General, blah 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 blah. It's like I am the gun when it comes to extending and elaborating fluff. But none of the stuff that I said about you today, Jimmy, is fluff. So
I will have to say this. Just a quick correction. My son Jack is 4 years old, and my daughter Sailor, she's 16 months.
My bad. I apologize, bro. That's right. My fault. It's hard to keep track of your amazing life, because I know you're doing so amazing things, right? Fluff. So anyway,
pumping up my tires. Let's go.
I've got a question to kick things off. So, Jimmy, I've known you, not personally, this is the first time we spoke, but obviously in the fitness industry, although it is large, it's also small, and we come across a lot of people. So, I've seen Gym Boss and the marketing that you do for gyms, but just a personal question. Before Gym Boss, what did you do?
I was actually, I had a personal training business. So, that was from 2012. Is when I first started in the fitness industry. So actually, this Christmas will be 10 years in the fitness industry as a whole.
Oh, congratulations.
Which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, can I give you my number?
Yeah. What is it?
19.
Wow.
I know, man.
How old were you when you started then?
18. I'm 37.
Okay, I was like a dinosaur entering the fitness space. Now, when I look back on it, I was like 29 when I started.
That is, man. That's a late starter, because Ken was also... So Ken and I met in the fitness industry. That was our first point of contact. And you would have been
That's
quite
right. Ken was a male model.
Yeah, he was a shredder.
Yeah. Back in the heyday. That's right. If you're following this podcast, please don't Google my name. You'll see some... explicit pictures you might not want to see, right? I hope that Nate and his friends won't see them.
It's not too late for OnlyFans. Okay, so you started the PT business, and how long did you run that for until it became Gym Boss Marketing to where you are? The beginning of Gym Boss Marketing, because obviously there's a progression from when that started.
Yeah, I started 2012, and then within like a couple of months, I was like, cool, I've got a business, but I've got no clients, so I need to figure this out. And Facebook ads was like brand new back then. So learned from a guy that was like the go-to guy in the industry that we all probably know, and I've all probably done something with him in the past, and learned from him. And that was the thing that sort of like got me hooked on marketing right from then, because I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. Because before that, I had a history in sales, and it was like all door to door, full commission, door knocking. If you don't sell anything, you don't get paid, that day, you don't get to eat that day. And that's how I built up my first bit of client list to like my first 10 or 11 clients, was just knocking on doors, local businesses, and because nobody else would do that. And I was like, that's all I know. And then I thought there's got to be a quick or better way though, and then saw that whole Facebook stuff, and that's where the trajectory sort of started. But I probably ran my own PT business. We grew it to, I had a bit of a different model. So we did semi-private, men's only, and for semi-private people that aren't in the fitness industry means super small groups. So it was 4 guys at a time per group, max. And we grew that. We had it subcontracted out into other people's gyms. So we had we had 3 locations going. We had 2 in Sydney, 1 up here on the Gold Coast. And it was going pretty good. But then during that time, I was consulting for another coaching business for gym owners, where I was like doing the Zoom calls twice a week on all around marketing and sales. That was the 2 things that people were coming on for. And during that time, I was like, I thought everybody knew how to do ads. Like, I thought, yeah, hey, everyone can do it. And then there'd be something that I could do for them in 1 hour. It took somebody 6 weeks to do. And I was like, man, I can't, like, trying to teach them is not the answer here, like for this type of person, because they just, no matter how much they get it, they either don't have the time or just can't be bothered, So I was like, okay, well, maybe I could do that. And then during that period, because I did that for about 1.5 years, the consulting, and then I had some friends that had gyms that were like seeing that I had more than 1 location going, and they were like, hey, can you run ads for me, mate? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. I've never done it before. Like, I guess so. I'll give it a crack. And so I had like a mate's powerlifting gym in Brisbane, had like an F45 over here, and I had a couple of other, friends' gyms that I was doing it for. And then I had like, I don't know, like maybe 4 gyms. And I was like, this could be a thing. Like, this could be a thing. And I was like, what do I really love the most? And it was the business element to the fitness industry, not the training and the nutrition and the stuff that, like, I still enjoy that. But if I was to put them next to each other, the marketing and sales stuff and everything else was a clear winner. So that was probably about 4 years ago we made the full switch. So it was probably about 2022 now? Yeah, it's about end of 2018 when we sort of made that change.
That's amazing, man. So naturally, being a gun at marketing and sales, and I knew you when you were a gun at sales, then you migrated into this gun at marketing. And now with this, right, meeting Katie, because she's a bit of a gun as well in the fitness space. Like, she likes to train hard and do these types of things. So did you use your marketing and sales tactics to score Katie and then start your family life? How did that work?
No, it's the complete opposite. And I can tell you a story about that. It was probably not PG, that's for sure. But long story short, we met, and then she kicked me out the first time that we got together. But she lied to me about it in a way to like get me out. Like, she deceived me. It's funny now when I look back on it, but at the time I was like, can I swear on this?
Yeah, of course, go for it.
I was like, fuck you, how dare you do that to me? So back then, this was before I was even in the fitness space and whatever, I was working hospitality management, and I had a shift that started at midday the next day. So we all went to a friend's barbecue, had a blinder, and then in the morning she's like, hey, do you know it's like 11:30? And I was like, what? So I just ran out of the house, got in a cab, had to go back to my house. And then I look in the cab on the clock, it says 7:30 a.m. I was like, no. What? And so anyway, and then from there, like, that, I think it's hilarious now looking back on it. But that was how we first met, yeah.
There you go. You got the boot first off. That's so cool. Hey, man, up. But she obviously stayed around, so it's exactly.
A fairy tale. That's what I was like, the Halley charm just worked every time, 60% of the time. So
I love it. So you said that Gym Boss has been functioning solo. Like, obviously you built up to it, but it's been functioning solo for about 4 years, which means that ties in with the birth of your first son as well, if he's 4 years too. So tell us a little bit about that time, because if you're going through a shift in business, and it sounds like you didn't go from a jump of having nothing and then creating something from scratch. You sort of had a nice on-ramp with outside clients, but there was still a bit of a change. So from becoming a dad and then switching full-time into business, what was that sort of process like?
It was very hard. Like, that transition to go from, I've never spoke about this part before, but going from the PT business to the marketing business, there was a period there where I was kind of like I made it sound really easy just then, but there was a period there where I was actually going, fuck this. Like, I'm over it. I'm just going to go get a job. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go get a job in a marketing agency. I was like, cool, I'll go do that. And then, or a sales, like in a sales role where I'm still in control of my income by like what I do. And then went for some interviews at some places locally on the Gold Coast and stuff. And then I looked around at all the other applicants because there was a couple of like group things that we did. And I was like, I'm not going to name the business so no one's going to know. But I was like, when I was doing it, I was like, these guys are like, I'm not in a bad way, but I'm like, I'm better than this. Like, I'm much better than this. And sometimes like you have to hit that. And that was the brokest probably period, one of the broke periods, because obviously in business you have fluctuations up and down, especially when you're transitioning fields. So it was really stressful financially during that time, which is why I was looking for an outside role. But it was like maximum in most of the roles was like 80K a year or something. I was like, how does it? And my wife wasn't working. So I was like, I can't provide for a family on 80 grand a year. Like, that's dumb. Like, so that was enough motivation to get that realization of like, come on, mate, like pull your finger out and let's make this thing work.
How was the stress with Katie? Sorry, Ken, I know that you're about to jump in, but just to unpack that a little bit, because I relate to this because I've gone through a similar process a couple of times, whether it's with a new startup where you go from doing really well to then, you know, you're like, okay, now I'm going to take a big risk and I know that my stuff's going to go backwards before it goes forwards. How was Katie with that? Because she's either just had a baby or about to have a baby, and there's obviously, as the dad, and I think that this provider instinct kicks in, and it's only something that you know about when you've had a baby. Obviously, you had your stresses. How was she with that process?
No, it wasn't good.
Okay, cool. Yep.
Yeah, it was not like that. Was where I was getting a lot of the push from, to be like, cool, because yeah, Jack, my boy, he was probably, because he's turning 5 soon, so he was probably like 10 months old at this stage. And so I was kind of like getting the external pressure, like, well, if haven't got it figured out, you've got to go get a job. And I was like, yeah. But also it was soul destroying, because being your own boss for like at that stage 6 years or something, to kind of go back. And also there was a whole bunch of like beliefs around it, like I'm a loser if I go get a job, and like all this, which is so dumb now when I look back on it, because there's a lot of people in careers that are crushing it in like employed roles. So, but there was a lot of that all around it. And, but I think I needed to, it wasn't like I was like rock bottom, but it was kind of like, you know, going on the downward trajectory where I went for these interviews and just get that realization of like that self-belief and that self-confidence back of like, okay, yeah, like I'm light years ahead of like this. And so now sometimes you need to see that. People can't tell you, you have to like experience it. At least for me, you can tell me everything until I actually do it, then I'll understand it.
For sure.
Look, I think Brendo and I are probably going through that phase now with the raising our 2 kids. So our kids are very, very close in age. You know, so I got Nate, Brendo's got Evie, and you know, we can tell our son or daughter many things like hot, don't touch, hot, or don't go into the cupboard and take out the wraps and eat the wraps. I just saw Evie doing that the other day, Brendo, and it's like, they need to go through a lesson of learning before they understand that they can do this or that, or, you know, that is touch, hot, I can't touch that, etc., etc. And, you know, going back to that story, right, I think everyone thinks there's this sexiness of being an entrepreneur, but no one
It's not. It's the complete opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
It is the exact opposite. I'm telling you now.
Yeah, and so there's this idea that being an entrepreneur is sexy, and not only that, it's like that's the pinnacle of success. If you're an entrepreneur, you're at the highest pinnacle of success you could possibly be. And I don't think people understand the level of sacrifice that people need to make to be able to be a successful entrepreneur. And there's many books.
Well, look, let's put it this way: before the agency, I had a beautiful beard, and now look at it; it's great.
Well, look, I mean, I've never had a beard, but you know, maybe one day.
Maybe one day, you got a luscious head of hair, bro. So what I've got down here, you're definitely making up for up here.
Yeah, and look, if anyone is just listening to the audio and didn't actually see where Brendo was pointing, he was pointing clearly to his beard, not down there as the so to speak is generally spoken. Yes. So So Jimmy, so obviously you've had this obviously fluctuation, this ebb and flow of income, these mindset issues of like, am I worthy? Am I a loser? Do I go out and crush this? And you went and really pushed through the hard times financially. And so how did that strain your relationship with Katie? And then how were you feeling when Jack was born for the first time?
So they're two separate things because they're at two separate times. So the relationship side with Katie, and rightly so, she is first and foremost security focused in terms of value of hierarchy, right? As long as we've got the basics of like rent, food, shelter, and all of that like consistently taken care of, then that relieves a certain element of massive stress from her life. And so for me, I'm kind of like, I can wing it a bit more because that's kind of like what I've done my whole life. And then you have to realize that it's not about you anymore. It is, but like you're with 4 people in the family, it's 25% you because it's about everybody else in the family. And so, and I'd probably even say it's, a lot of the times it's even less because you're doing things for everybody else. So your priorities in terms of what you used to do as just a couple without kids becomes completely different, obviously. So for me, becoming a dad, so that was number one, the Katie thing. So that was stressful. And that was where a lot of the conversations were. And I was like, I can't just like wing this anymore. I need to get like level 1 covered. Like, but previous business it was, but to be honest, I lost the passion for it and I kind of let it like fade a little bit. And then I was like in this zone of like, what do I do? Should I do this? Should I do consulting or should I do done for you? Or should I go get a job? And I was like toying up and playing around with those things. But I do remember when we got our first official client for the agency was like, we celebrated that. That was cool. Remember we had the pram, we went out because I live on the Gold Coast, I know exactly where we went, this place in Broadbeach, had a beer and she had a glass of wine and we just like, it was like in the afternoon, I took the afternoon off work where I normally would never do that. And it was like a Thursday or Friday afternoon or something. And we celebrated with that, and that was really cool. So that kind of cemented the start of where it was. So I'll never forget that. So that was cool, the turnaround point. But I just literally had to, from that point to make that happen, I just went hard on my organic side of things because I had a network of gym owners. I was like, what am I doing? So I was like, cool. I did a couple of like freebies here and there, 2-week trials, stuff like that. And if you like it, I'll give you like a 50% off deal. I just wheeled and dealed and did whatever I could to get the first, say like $5,000 a month covered of like rent and basics. And that happened like pretty quick after I sort of went for those sales jobs. I was like, that's it. I got to put my finger out. So that was that one. And then becoming a dad. Sorry if I'm talking too much too, by the way.
Nah, man, that's why you're here.
So the dad thing was that was hard. That was really hard for me. Like, I love to party, love to drink, love to, do all that stuff. Even though I was a personal trainer, I like to do both extremes. My thing was either 100% or nothing. That's kind of like my internal default for good and bad, right? And so to go from that to then become a dad where I'm like, okay, cool. Like, it was the identity of becoming a dad was hard because of like, am I really a dad? My dad's a dad. I'm not a dad. Like, in my mind, I still was looking up to him like he was my dad and I was still like almost like the kid. And like, it was a really bizarre time for me. It took me at least 6 months. And to be honest, how, and I can quite confidently say this because I have an amazing relationship with my kids, but I really don't like the fact, unless it's genuine, which I don't think it is for most people, at least from my experiences that I've had in private with other dads. Oh, it's so amazing. I'll just love my kid, instant connection, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. If that happens to some dads out there, amazing, great. For me, did not happen. I did not connect with him. I didn't love him. I didn't have any of that because I felt so fucking weird about myself. Like, I was dealing with my internal stuff and then I was like, what am I doing? We're like, I don't have no idea what I'm doing. And, luckily my wife is just such a rock. Like, she is such a rock. And she helped me like through that time when she should have been getting the support. And I did, but internally I had all this like, there was a lot of stuff to try and like become a dad?
I know Brendo and I can definitely comment on this. So, Brendo, I'm going to let you comment on that because Brendo and I had very similar emotions and feelings here.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
you and me were somewhat opposite, Ken, from I think when we spoke. So I had I was going through like a lot of stuff just before we had Evie in the lead up, and I just sold a business which was a roller coaster, 2 years of a ride to get it to that point. So when just before Evie was born, I'd sold a business. I'd banked cash, so I didn't have those financial stresses, and I was pretty much a dad for a stay-at-home dad for 3 months. I don't think that I had a lot of the background stuff. I know that we had like a really good pregnancy and a really difficult birth, which ended up, it was a 51-hour labor that ended up in an emergency cesarean. Yeah, it was pretty wild. And for me, that was like a traumatic shock, which just got released like afterwards. I think, I cried pretty much for 3 days straight, just watching your partner go through that. And that was sort of the difficult times. But from a paternal perspective, because I never thought, like me and my wife, we weren't like paternal kid crazy people. I'd never really been around kids.
Yeah, neither with us.
No, it was like, oh, okay, we're 35. We said that we would have a baby if we had one by 35. So, are we going to regret it if we don't? And the answer was, yeah, we're going to regret it. So that was sort of like our lead, like that was sort of our thing. But neither of us were paternal people. I feel like instinctually I was probably wired for it pretty well, where I clicked on with Evie straight away. But yeah, for me it was like a labor sort of thing. But my challenges, I always tell people, and I try to say it in a way that I try to make sense out of. For me, the dad part isn't the hard part. That for me, which was something which was naturally sort of wired, but the supporter part is the hardest part for me because, your partner's lost their identity. Well, this is, again, everyone's experience is different, but she lost her identity. There's a lot of stresses, a lot of changes, a lot of tears, and we've spoken about it, so it's fine. But I'm like, hey, like I'm trying to help, except she's down at a consistent rate, and so that was probably the hardest part for me.
That's crazy. I mean, I know Breno and I, we spoke about this a few times before, and for me, to kind of touch on those same emotions there, we had a really amazing pregnancy as well, and the birth wasn't as traumatic as Brendo's experience, but was still very crazy for me. And much like you, Jimmy, I know you and I have had some drinks together, so I'm like 100. If we're going to go drinking, I'm going to go 100 with you. Right? And at the pregnancy, we were in the label suite, and Kristen's pushing, and obviously the OB comes in, and she sticks her hand up there and says nope, and then walks out. And I didn't feel like this love and this affection from the OB. I felt it amazingly from the midwives. I think they just do their job so incredibly well, and
100%.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like the doctor comes in and does like sciencey probing, and then like no emotional connection whatsoever. They leave, and but the midwives are really there to support you, which I really love the midwives, but I feel like the OBs could do a lot of work in terms of creating that loving experience for the couple. And I think Brendo, I think you touched on it right. It's like, and same with you, Jimmy. It's like there was no support for us, and that's actually one of the reasons we started this podcast, because we see that there's a lot of support and help for mothers and not really for dads. And my identity was so shifted when I've gone from a guy who's like, go, 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 it's all me, and go, 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 it's me and Kristen. But even still, it's me and Kristen. It's still me, because if I get more, Kristen gets more. But it's just really, if I can just motivate myself, I can get more and more and more. Now it's not like, cool, I can work 100-hour weeks, no stress at all. It's like, if I work 100-hour weeks, I don't spend time with my son. I wake up too early. I don't see him before I go off to work. If I come home from work, he's in bed before I get home. I can't spend any time with him. And these are some of the most important times of their lives, right? That real bonding experience.
100%. And I would have to agree, like, a lot of that is changing, like, your whole schedule and priorities and things like that. And that makes it, like, part of your identity, because before you'd be like, cool, I wake up, I'll just walk out to the cafe and just get a coffee. Like, it's just like, I remember seeing there was like some famous comedian who was like doing a little skit, and he was like, oh, you people that don't have kids, you don't get it. You just look at each other and go, shall we go to the cinema? Sure. Grab the keys, let's go. And then just walks out the door. It's like nothing could be more true. Like when you have a kid, it takes you an hour just to get out the door, just to grab a cup of coffee, you know?
I'd love to see, I know Brendo's travelled over East a couple of times with Evie and Shell, and I would just love to see the luggage, because I know when we go down south for like a weekend or a week trip, we've got like 10 suitcases. So I don't know. It's crazy.
Can I give you guys a story before we move forward on that? So I'm really into stand-up comedy, right? And Tim Dillon came to, I'm not sure if anyone knows Tim Dillon, but he's part of that kind of Joe Rogan circle. So he came, and I'm really into these guys. So he was came to Perth, and I bought tickets, and I was so excited. And Shell and I hadn't had a date night. So I'm like, this is the one. We have friends over that can babysit. And Shell, with her motherly instincts wired in, was so freaked out about leaving Evie. And I'm trying to get out of the house, and I'm like, "Hey, we're gonna miss Tim. Like, you know, we've already gonna miss the opening night. We're gonna miss Tim." And I kept on trying to get out, and then she's, you know, trying to do a breastfeed, and then, you know, making sure she's down. And I'm like, hey, it's all right. We got babysitters. They got kids. They know how it all works. It's all good. I'm trying to pull her out of the house. Anyway, we rocked up about half an hour late for Tim Dillon, and got about 28 minutes at the end of it. And then that was our date night. So, yeah, me trying to get out of the house, trying to plan stuff. It takes a bit of time.
Yeah. It does. It does.
So going back to your story with Gym Boss, and, you know, you'd started, and that goal of, you know, getting that baseline, you know, that $5,000 to make sure things were paid for. Tell us about the time there when you're going through this new sort of startup acquisition stage and having a 10 or 12-month-old baby at that point in time. So Ken spoke about balancing and work. So how did you allocate your time, and how did you still balance having a young baby in the house whilst you're trying to get things off the ground?
Good question. So while you were talking, just before I answer that, there was, to go back, the statement I said where it took me 6 months, where I said, you know, where I was like internally sort of dealing with stuff or whatever. That was still trying to feel like I was a dad. The love connection thing took me about 2 weeks. I just want to make sure that's clear. I didn't have like 6 months where I was like just looking at this baby going, what do I do with it? But that was still a weird period of time there. But to go back to your other question, I don't know if your other guests say this, but business is insane. Like, business is so crazy, can be so volatile at times, can be so cruisy at times. It's never the same month after month, right? It's not like a normal job where you go and, you know, Mondays are going to be like this, Tuesdays are going to be like this. So it's really important, in my perspective, in my opinion, and at least in my experience, to have a partner that is completely rock solid, that is complete, and your personal life needs to be really like tame, because your professional life is so extreme. And so if you have an extreme lifestyle where you're out partying and doing all sorts of things, and, you know, you have a insanely volatile relationship with your wife or your partner, it is so hard to focus on business, because all of your brain capacity is taken up in your personal life of all the drama. So if you have like a pretty calm, chill, rock solid, loving, just relationship, that makes business so much easier. So I was very lucky that our relationship is really solid. And Katie is the black and white. She's the very like rational, like, hey, let's talk about reality. And I'm the very much like, yeah, let's like go to the moon, you know, like let's dream and go up here. You know what I mean? So we kind of balance each other out in a nice way. And so having that first and foremost was like, I'm just so lucky to have her. And then, but then it became more of like, I went hard into Dan Kennedy's time management book.
Yeah.
That book is killer.
Dan Kennedy. Yep.
Yeah. His time management for entrepreneurs. I don't know what the book is, but maybe you guys might know.
So he has the No BS series with everything,
Yes,
and it would have
right.
been the No BS time management for entrepreneurs or marketers or something like that.
Yes. Read that. If you're a business owner, everybody should read that. In fact, even if you're not a business owner, there was a couple of good things in there. I didn't use them all, because sometimes that's the whole thing about reading books and whatever. But having a solid like structure to your day about certain things and about not letting things bleed out into family time. So having hard starts and hard cutoffs was critical. And so it was really hard for me to like, basically I do like a 9 to 5. There's more or less. Or like now I do like 8:30 till 5 because I have my first team meeting at 8:30. And so I have to do everything during that time. And if I can't, then it has to wait till the next day.
And so you still cut things between that time and you don't bring things back 100%. Home? That's so cool.
Yeah. So working from home, you have to. So I've got the office here at home, the home office, and literally right there is, if I open my door, that goes out to the kitchen and then the dining room and the open plan living room out there. And so the kids are out there, and so they go to daycare most days now. And so they leave the house around 8:30, which is when I have my first meeting, which is cool. And then they come home roughly around 4:30, 5 o'clock. So I need to be dad, And so that was, it has its challenges, but it makes you become better and more efficient because you don't have time to fart around.
We had Jeremy Minor on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he spoke about the power of switching off. So you're either 100% with your family or you're 100% at work. And I think Ryan Tuckwood also touched on this as well when he was on the podcast. Look, Jimmy, I want to switch gears for a little bit because what I find when I speak to a lot of dads and, a lot of families and new families at that, everybody comes from different backgrounds of parenting, i.e. we were parented in a specific way. And how did that conversation go with you and Katie? And maybe if you touch on what was your relationships like with your parents growing up, and how has your parents affected the way you parent?
What's the first question? How was my parenting when I was a kid?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, depends who's listening, but like for me, it seemed normal. Like, right, but it's like the classic grown up in the 80s. Because I was born in 83, so it was like 80s, early 90s. Mum carried around a wooden spoon in the handbag because she had two boys that were just running amok. And when she's in the supermarket, she'd, do you know what I mean? Like, that was acceptable back then because that's just what it was. And it wasn't like we were getting brutalized or anything. It was just kind of like the threat of it was enough to make you kind of go, until you got to a certain age where she'd do it, it would break, and then you look at her and go, hey, what else you got? And so at that point she was kind of like, well, I don't know. That's when you have two teenage boys.
So when you get the buckle of the belt, that's the worst one.
Yeah, we never had anything like that. But I remember my parents are still married now. They're amazing. So both of them met in the Navy, and Dad's still in the Navy now to this day. But because of that, he was away a bit, like having to go out to sea because he was on, doing like 3 months away and stuff like that. So there was a little bit like that. But then he did a period of time, like about 10 years, where he quit. And then we moved to Queensland, and then we could have like stay at one school, throughout the most of our schooling life, which was really cool. So I don't know, I just feel like I had a normal upbringing. Me, mum, dad, and my brother, and me and my brother getting up to mischief as two boys would, and but just. I hate to say normal, but it feels like it was
sounds
normal.
like a classic Aussie family bring up, because I can relate. So I'm 1985, so we're very, very similar. But it was literally that. So mum and dad are still together. And same thing, like what you said, for me, I would consider it normal. But we actually had this orange spoon specifically because the wooden spoon would break and the orange spoon was unbreakable. But that was the threat, the orange spoon.
Yeah. Well, there's no way that would happen now, right? Like, we don't do that at home. Like, there's no way, because it's just, it's evolved. Your times evolve and things like that. So, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it was normal. And Katie's side was a little bit different. She was, for the most part, just her mum and her sister. And so it was different, like, because her dad passed away when she was, probably, I don't even know what age, but like early teens or something like that. But their parents weren't together at that stage either. So she's had a completely different upbringing. And so her mum was like super over the top protective because of that, and like super loving and just giving them, everything that they wanted and needed. And so it was different for both of us. But I think we come together. In saying that though, I would say that her style, Katie's style of like parenting, is nothing like her mum's. Like, she's such an anomaly. Like, she's such a strong-willed and strong, like, has her own like views of the world, and she has this insane ability of ultimate common sense that most people don't have. But also in saying that, for her, it seems like it's so normal that she doesn't understand that people don't think the same. And I'm like, you have to understand that not everybody's brain works the same as you. She just was like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would people feel like that?
I think it really becomes very, very transparent with parenting. The children either copy the exact methods that the parents took or the complete opposite.
I think she's done the complete opposite. Yeah.
It's like, I remember saying to my parents when I was a teenager, like, I would never teach my kids like you. I would never do what you do to me. Rah 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 rah. But I'm falling into the habits that my mum and dad did, and a lot of those habits are really, really good, and some obviously I've eradicated, like the back of the belt buckle, or my mum putting chili flakes. My mum's like an old Asian traditional lady, so putting the chili on your tongue, like, I'll teach you a lesson, like, you won't do this again.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
I remember this. Both myself and my brother got busted smoking at school. Like, this is back when smoking was cool. Right?
Oh yeah, man. I feel like you and me are like some sort of like spirit animals together, because that was I was a dude buying and selling durries to people in high school.
Oh, so good. And the word durry, that even dates you right there.
Jesus Christ.
That's so good.
Whilst you were smoking durries, right? I was having those fad lollies, in the primary school playground.
Oh, yeah. So I remember we got busted. We're both probably around the same age. So my brother's 2 years younger than me. So I reckon I got busted about when I was like 13 or something. And then he got busted around about 13 as well. And both times, Mum came home with a 40 pack of cigarettes and said, "You're smoking them all before you come inside." That was her punishment. And I sat there crying, going, "No, I don't want it, no." And my parents are straight 180s. Like, they don't drink, they don't smoke, nothing. So she comes over with this, was a big shock. Like, I can't believe my mum bought cigarettes. Oh, my God. And then my brother was complete opposite. He gets a pack of cigarettes, puts his feet up on the chair and goes, "No worries."
I'll take it on. No worries. And if that were a 40 pack, that was some dirty Long Beach cigarettes.
Long Beach, it was Long Beach.
What a pick!
You got it. It was Long Beach.
I wasn't killing.
Wow.
I knew my customers. I was an entrepreneur from a young age.
I can't believe I remembered that.
I think we'll make sure when we create the reels and we put this podcast out, go hashtag Siggy Boys. Hashtag Siggy Boys.
Oh yeah.
$2 a durry.
$2 a day. Wow. My God. So Jimmy, look, I think, the way, if you guys are just tuning into the audio, if you're tuning into the video, you'll see that Jimmy's really got this split on his screen where he's got his gym boss on one section. On the other side of his screen, he's actually got his family, which is actually perfect, because what we want to do is uncover the balance between running a business and having an amazing family. And Jimmy's really kind of alluded to how he sets really strict structures, and, he has no bullshit for taking, work outside of the office and doing it when it's supposed to be family time and kid time, which is really, really awesome and powerful. And so, Jimmy, what are some of the big takeaways you can give to new dads out there, or even, aspiring dads that are looking at becoming a dad in the next, 1 to 2 years? What are the things and tips and tricks that you can kind of give to dads? Give us 5.
There's a couple of things there. So people that are aspiring to be a dad, is that what you're saying? Or like they're already a dad, because they're kind of different. New dads. Well, number one is it's okay to go to counseling. I had to do it to get your mind to, because like sometimes it's not, it's especially from our era where you grow up and it's like, hey man, like something's fucking wrong with you if you got to go do that. But it's not, because if you're a business owner and you've just become a dad, you've got an immense amount of pressure in your life that regular dads don't have, right? And so because it's not just like double hard, it's like compounded, like it's like 10 times harder. So that's okay. And I've had to do that a couple of times. So there was a period where going through that to like, if you get stressed and then you take it home, like even though you're at home, but into the personal life, that's not good. So you got to figure out how to like deal with all that sort of stuff first, because that can, like, I'd say that's probably the biggest one that helped me massively. And then, number 2 would be, which is something that we actually pride ourselves on, is have amazing communication with your wife. Make sure you talk about everything, like everything, because the more that you don't talk about stuff and share with, like, you know, same both ways, like what's happening with your wife, she needs to fill you in, what's happening with the kids and, you know, how she's feeling about things, and if she needs support from you on certain things or whatever, and vice versa, like say, like, this is what's going on, like this is what's happening with me, because the more you don't talk about stuff, the more that you just try and, like, you know, just, you know, I'll just crack on. That's where it, like, can bottle up, and then you end up being like that dad that yells at your kids and, you know, does all that sort of stuff, and that's not fun for you, it's not fun for the kids, not fun for anybody. So I would say those two are, like, probably the biggest ones. Number 3, a real tactical one, share a Google Calendar with your wife. Like, that one really helps heaps, because I don't know about how it is in your dynamic, but I've got the business stuff on lock. I've got the easy job when I really think about it. Wife's got everything else. So when it comes to, like, kids' birthday parties or medical appointments or, like, dentists or, like, whatever, she'll just go onto my Google Calendar that we share. She'll block me out so I don't get any sales calls booked in or anything else. She'd be like, you got to make sure you go to this thing. And I'm like, cool, it's in the calendar. Then that means nobody can book in, and vice versa. So if there's other things that we have coming up, like that is hands down has helped heaps. And so in doing that, though, as well, block out in your calendar the personal time. So don't just have your Google Calendar wide open. So, like, go to the point, like, where you literally block out your sleeping times, block out when you're having lunch, block out when you're going to the gym, you know, block out, you know, all that sort of stuff. Then you have the business hours open, and then that's where, like just doing that is, like, tactical stuff really helps. Fourth one, I would say, is because I'm getting a bit older, I could get away with it when I was younger, but I don't know, like, it's really weird because when you're a trainer and you're a gym owner, you, like, have this identity of, like, cool, I'm like this health and fitness guy. And now that so you train hard, you know, you eat well, you know, you do all that sort of stuff. But then ever since I've come over to the agency side, that side of thing has kind of slipped for me. And I just don't know if it's because I'm getting a bit older as well and whatever, but going from being in a gym with people to, like, sitting behind a desk for, like, 8-9 hours is a big difference, right? And so simple health and fitness stuff, like, whatever you do, like, keep it up. Like, make sure you block that out and do that, because that can really affect you. Like, I know there's be days where, or sometimes it might be like a week where I just work, and then I eat kind of shit because I'm, like, stressed out, because that would be my only, like, I'm doing air quotes here, fun outlet, because I'm not drinking, I'm not going out, you know, doing anything or whatever it is. So I'm like, cool, let's get Uber Eats. Yeah, let's do that. You know, because there's, oh yeah, all right.
I need my fix.
Yeah, and then but then you do that, like, a couple of times, and then you start feeling shit, like, blah, blah, blah. So the health and fitness thing is a big thing that's on my mind at the moment, because I kind of, like, I still train and stuff like that, but I'm nowhere near to the intensity where I used to, and I just can't recover as good. And there's probably because I'm not looking after myself nutritionally as good as what I used to. But yeah, keep up some sort of fitness routine. And I don't know, a fifth one. What have we gone through? Counseling, speak with your wife.
Google Calendar.
Share a Google Calendar.
Fitness. I think that's almost, like, sweet there. So with Google Calendar, I actually learnt this from Ken, where I got really into it. So for anyone who's listening, like, you have to do the Google Calendar thing. And in a practical sense, and I'm looking at the time now, so my wife needs to train and I have to work between. I'm like you, Jimmy. I actually, being an entrepreneur, I was used to waking up at 4, starting work, kind of doing what I needed to, and working or having meetings till late at the night. But now I don't do that. It's like, okay, here's my work time, here's my family time, here's my training time, and every single thing is scheduled into a Google Calendar. But I'm okay. So what we did is we linked up our Google Calendars, and I said to my wife, okay, you need to put in all of your gym sessions and all of your calls, like all the little work and stuff that you need to do outside, so I know in advance what you need to do so I can be there to support. Because if you don't put it in, I'm not going to know, and then you're going to struggle to get that outlet. So she's actually going to train in 10 minutes, which is good timing to be able to do this. So you have to do that. So we have two more questions to wrap this up, and these are the two questions that we always ask. You've sort of touched on it in that last one, which is sort of good to lead in. So my thing, being the fitness industry dude and growing up in the fitness industry, and the whole fitness and health and longevity is so super important to me. And we all know, the dad bod, the classic dad bod story. So you've spoken about it briefly, but what's your fitness advice? How do you like to keep fit? And I know that this is something you're working on, but how do you do that now?
Yeah, so I'm actually been really, and I used to poo-poo this idea, but I'm really big on walking.
Okay, yep.
Which is really different because there's, I don't know the statistics, but there's studies on getting comorbidities decrease massively just by hitting a certain amount of steps per day of just neat, non-exercise activity, whatever, right? And so I looked at my iPhone. I was like, oh, yeah, I haven't tracked my steps in ages. Looked at my iPhone. There'd be days where I do 1,000 steps.
Yeah, wow.
That's it.
Yeah.
1,000. That's nothing. And so, I'm and I've even got a dog. What's my excuse? She's down here now. So I've now there'll be some mornings where before being a dad, I'd be cool, weight training 4 or 5 days a week. Now I'm kind of if I can only pick one, I'll probably pick the walk first. Because it's getting me outside, fresh air, all that sort of stuff, like vitamin D, just all that kind of, and it's kind of my only me time really, where I can listen to a podcast and whatever. So I'm big on that, but then also, the bro in me can't die. So I love to hit the iron too. So it's kind of, but going to the gym is cool. But if you go, for me, I have to go at 5:30, 6 a.m. or otherwise it just doesn't happen. And same for my wife. So we have to go super early in the morning, but then I'm inside all day, inside at the gym. Sometimes I'll opt for the walk.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. I really enjoy walking, but not just for myself. Actually, I enjoy going with Kristen and my son because it's our family time, which we really love. So look, final question now, because look, we really appreciate your time, and we know your time is extremely valuable. So what is one question no one has ever asked you, either around being a dad, generating wealth, running a business, balancing time, whatever, that you secretly wish someone had asked you?
I wish you gave me time to prep for this one, because that's
this
a good one.
This is the best part. It's on the spot. It's a really good one.
What is a question I wish someone would ask me, but they never do?
And don't be weird. Don't be like, oh, how big's my finger?
No, I don't know. I just think people don't really ask, at least for me, people, and I've already spoke about it. I just don't think people really ask about the mental health side of things, because there's been some times where just with business can get really tough and whatever else, where you get anxiety, you get some depression and things like that. I've had some times where I've gone and got my blood work done and my testosterone is almost zero because of those factors, because they're what's the factors that apply to that? They go obesity, and I was like, well, not me. And then they're anxiety, depression, and something else. And I was like, anxiety, depression, and stress. And I was like, yeah, I've probably got a little concoction of all of those at certain periods of time. You know what I mean? And so I don't think people really talk about that and how that affects your business and your personal life.
Let me be the one to ask you that question for the first time. How has business and being a dad and all those types of things affected your mental health?
Yeah. It's in a negative way, big time, a lot of the times. And this is the whole thing at the start, when you said people think it's really sexy to be an entrepreneur. It's a complete opposite. It's the hardest fucking thing you'll ever do in your life, right? So being a dad is probably a close runner-up, but I would say doing that is one of the hardest things, because it is very isolating and a lot of people don't quite get it. And it is very, it can't, it's just, at least for me, you're never off. There's always that last sales conversation you had in your head. There's that last client cancellation, or there's that last internal, operations issue that you're trying to deal with. There's always something going on. And like what you said, it's good to have those switch off times. That really helps. But I think looking after yourself, making sure that your mental health, your physical health, I think the physical start is the primer to it. Having good routine, having the good physical health, having the good like conversations with people about it. And if you need to, go and get some help about it, because that's the stuff that can really handbrake your business and your family altogether.
Yeah, awesome. Love that.
So good, man. That's such a good answer. Well, that sort of brings us to the end. Jimmy, mate, thank you so much for being on. It was great to finally be able to catch up and chat and hear this side of you as well. No doubt we'll link up outside of this too. But for anyone listening, what's the best way for them to reach out to you, or what's the best way for them to find you?
Instagram's probably pretty easy, at the Jimmy Halley, like at THE Jimmy Halley. Or if you're a gym owner and you want some help with your marketing and your appointment setting, go to iwantgymleads.com. iwantgymleads.com. Go over there. We've got our call center service, marketing services. You can check us out.
Awesome. Guys, thank you very, very much for tuning in. Jimmy, thank you for your time. Brendo and I can't wait to release this podcast, and we'll see you guys real soon. Peace out. That's it from us on this episode on The Dad Bub Show. If you want to find out a little bit more about us, head on over to www.dadbub.com. Until next time, see you next week.